Jai Hind and welcome to Dev Talks. Jai Bharat, as discussed with Major General Rajiv Narayanan the other day. But, anyways, let's get back. Xi Jinping, there's a lot happening within China that we need to analyze. And my opinion tells me, or a little birdie from China actually tells me, there is something happening within China with regards to Xi Jinping. Of course, the major focus of the world right now is the COVID crisis. Everybody's saying COVID, yay, COVID, whoa, leaving apart the big, huge person, if I may, that actually runs China. What's happening with Xi Jinping? What is the impact of his sudden switch from the zero COVID policy? What is going to happen to China? Let's discuss with a little bit of a twist. And as a matter of fact, this twist is big because the Chinese military themselves today say that they are not able to fight. They are not strong enough to fight. And this is not me saying, this is the Chinese military saying so. So let's get into the show. But before I do, guys, please do like the video, subscribe if you haven't, uh, hit the bell icon so that you get the notifications. We do a show every day at the same time, so you probably know where to catch me on. And of course, yes, if you can, please do help out and contribute towards the Dev Talks efforts. It really helps me going further and further in doing more and more work for you and getting better and better analysis just for you on Dev Talks. Let's get into it. Of course, as you know, I always have a presentation ready for all of you guys to go through so that all of us can actually see through what I am referring to. As I said, the COVID crisis is terrible, and this is just one picture that I've put across, which tells you what's actually happening in the streets, in the homes, in the hospitals of China. Things are bad. It's not something that one can be happy about because it's at the end of it human lives. You can see the misery, the kind of issues that people are going through with regard within this photograph. And remember, this is COVID we are talking about. This is not a normal disease. This is transmissible COVID, which people are sitting there with a single mask. And here was China who would lock up people because there was a single case that came up in a building. They would lock up the entire city block. Indeed. Now, COVID crisis is a bad thing to happen for any country, but China today is being a bit arrogant about it. We will discuss how. What we know is that they went through about 2.5 years of zero COVID policy, and suddenly there were massive protests that took place in China. We all seem to believe that that should have been or would have been the cause for Xi Jinping to lifting up, for Xi Jinping to lift up all these restrictions. Is that so, or is there more to this story? Of course, these protests were a big contributing factor. The economy is a big contributing factor, and many other things which happen in China that we might not even know at the back end would be also contributing factors for Xi Jinping or the ones that rule China to remove this zero COVID policy. Now, what's the impact of this policy? I want to talk about the overall impact of zero COVID and its removal. Right? Xi's zero COVID policy resulted in people getting this idea that if they stayed at home, they would be safe. Of course, when you were in lockdown, if you remember, go back to us. When we were in lockdown, suddenly, personally speaking, when it opened up, you were a bit scared. You don't know what's going to happen. What is COVID? There's a lot. So Chinese people are in that mindset today. Uh, they're telling them to go out, but a lot of people are saying no. And that also tells you that's a big reason, by the way, for vaccine hesitancy. Because they say, why do I need a vaccine? I can sit at home and do everything. That's a big problem. Affernity, a British health analytics company, and there are very few in the world, by the way, estimates that China is seeing 14,700 deaths a day from the virus as of 4th of January, for total 176,500 cumulative fatalities since December 1, right? Its model predicts 1.7 million deaths across the country by the end of April. That's a lot. Now, this is a modeling. Of course, there were other figures that came out, but this is the latest one, so I just put it across there. I can't judge for the life of me which one is correct, but since the Chinese don't tell, and of course the videos that come out do tell a certain story, but you can't really figure out what exactly is happening on the ground. When people come out from their long hibernations sort of a thing, they have a lot of money to spend suddenly, and that's something that we see in China currently, because certain parts of their economy seem to be kind of taking a little bit of a rise. A lot of people are wondering, yeah, China is back, China is back, Xi Jinping has done it again. But it is actually the factor that it is basically revenge spending. It is revenge travel which is actually taking place, and we'll talk about the travel as we go forward, because I personally have a bit of a opinion about that. But let's kind of go forward. There hasn't been any consumer stimulus in China. There's a lot of unemployment amongst rural people, so you likely have a bump in the market because of these policy reversals, as I said, but it's not going to last too long. Now, remember what happened when India lockdown opened? Everybody wanted to have everything. It's like, you've been on a diet for about 2 years, and this like the first Domino's pizza you eat. So it's you're gonna go. Everybody's gonna go for that pizza. It's gonna tuck tuck tuck. But once that pizza has been eaten, then you're like, okay, I'm done now. Let me hang on. Let me see what's happening. That's called getting back to real life. So there's going to be revenge spending, but the getting back to real life will also bring whatever went up in terms of the economy back down. Why? The tremendous portion of Chinese economy, especially since 2009, has been driven by real estate, right? So something like 70% of a person's household income goes into buying real estate, right? It's like a cultural thing in China. You need to have two three houses if you've arrived to a certain point. So youngsters are working hard to get these houses up and this and that. And we all know that 20 to 30% of Chinese economy is basically on real estate. Now when something like that happens, and then you have Evergrande and so on and so forth, there's so many countries that have actually so many companies that have actually gone back. You know what is happening there. So people are losing money. Yes, there's going to be a little bit of revenge spending, but the other factor is when people lose money, they will stop spending it very, very fast. So it's a giant bubble, right? The reason it lasted for about 20 years, what is the giant bubble, is the real estate market, is because the government itself is terrified of bursting it. Now, how do I say this? Xi Jinping basically in 2020 decided to stop these rollovers of the bad loans and stuff like that. He said, bus, enough, stop. We need to get our economy back in shape and everything like that. When he did that, all these damn things started defaulting. Of course, his IT industry, we all know, is in chaos. I mean, Jack Ma has pretty much run away. Tencent and all these Alibaba and all these companies are in bad situations right now, especially with the chip war, as they say, which is happening between US and China. The big impact which is happening is that the Chinese people themselves are getting banned. Now, why do I say that? Last week, some time ago, there was a report that came out that one aircraft landed, I think, in Italy or something like that, and pretty much, I think, 50 or 70 or 100% of that aircraft was infected. It was turned around and out. Loads of countries have come up and said Chinese citizens need to come get tested, this, that, and the other. China has been protesting that. Oh, why are you doing this to us? We are very this and that and the other. But please understand, no country wants a time bomb exploding. Little Xi Jinping's running around their country and doing whatever they're doing. Chinese people are getting banned. Now that's something of a personal offense. Imagine you have to kind of go somewhere and you stand in a line and this and that because of a stupid policy that your country has done. Uh, think about the Pakistanis who have their trousers taken off every time they kind of go to the US. You'll kind of get the picture of what I'm saying. She, what have you done? Now, Jack Ma, as I was talking about, has given up control of the Ant Group. He said, Bhaiya, maaf karo, main ja raha hu. I believe he's sitting in Tokyo learning how to do gardening. Xi Jinping calls China's COVID policy well thought out. Wow. Well thought out, really, huh? Okay. I mean, I don't know what to say to this when somebody says something like that. But, anyways, let's just take it like that. He said this. It is a scientific. based and a targeted approach. Hmm. What is the scientific thing in the next news which sees young people are self infecting? They're saying, यार infection तो होना है जल्दी हो जा. They're self infecting as fears for the elderly people grow. Elderly people have a vaccination rate of some 40-50%. Well thought of, scientific. Remember that. How can she do that? China is in talks with Pfizer for a genetic COVID drug. Pfizer. Isn't Pfizer a Western company? Hmm. Today there was an interesting news that Chinese made mRNA vaccines start trial production and they're doing testing also. Okay, good step. mRNA vaccines have worked. Very good. Were they sleeping all this while? Xi Jinping. That's something that we must ask. Why are they doing these vaccine trials now when their vaccines are supposed to be damn good? Doesn't the WHO need to answer on that? 2 billion people are to travel to China. It's called the China's Great Migration over the next 40 days. And to that, I say, I think I saw this movie before. A lot of people have made tons of videos saying that Chinese are doing this purposefully. They are sending the virus all around the world, saying, "Bhaiya, hum to doob rahe, puri dunya ko, we will sink all together." I don't know what to say to something like this, and the world is kind of accepting it. A large number of countries are allowing the Chinese citizens to come in. So, testing and identification and so on and so forth is going to be a big problem, right? For example, Thailand has said Chinese citizens don't need to get tested. You're like normal. You just come in and stay and do whatever you want to. A lot of Indians travel to Thailand. That's a problem. Of course, our vaccines, our processes, our systems, and a whole lot of things have kind of worked. But please understand, look at the West, where their vaccines have given them a bit of a challenge. So this is ticking little Xi Jinpings, which are going to run around the world and do what they did the previous time. It is intentional or not is something I'd leave you to judge, not me. I'm here just to give you the facts and try and tell you that this is a big problem. The world needs to kind of put an end to this. I don't know why people are being nice about it. Why the Western countries are being nice. If the Russians would have done something like this, or we would have done something like this, the kind of, questioning we would have been getting in all public forums. But it's silent. Yes, there are articles being written, there are this and that and the other, but nothing. Beyond that, nothing. There are no sanctions. Why not? You know, that is where the hypocrisy of the West comes out quite loudly. Before I get to this slide, I want to also bring about a point that the West can, or the collective West, as per se, could actually give a cost to China for doing stuff like this, sanctioning it, do something. No. When it came to the Russia-Ukraine war, Putin saw three steps towards Ukraine and the sanctions came in. War, aggression, this. Okay. They fought with us in Galwan. Aggression. Were there sanctions? No. We stand with India. Statements. Yangtze right now, we stand with India. We resolutely support. Abey, support ka kya karna hai? If you're that big sanction junkies, sanction China, no? It will not happen. Remember this. And that's something that we need to remember. We fight alone, guys. We fight alone. We fight the entire multi domain spectrum against China all by ourselves. Do not look around for help. And that is the bottom line. Let's get to it now. The reason I said all this stuff is because even China is worried that yeah, India can fight alone. It says China's world factory moniker and whether China or others could steal it remains a topic of discourse within China. reported by South China Morning Post. It says disparaging comments in the state media about India's ability to supplant China, China in manufacturing, and multinationals have already, kind of seen diversifying. What they say is poor infrastructure and industrial shortcomings and relatively weak literacy in places such as India are all cited as reasons why China will stay competitive. Really fantastic. Great. Remember this, guys. This is how a narrative is built within China. They're going to tell their people, guys, ऐसा नहीं है यार, India is a poor country. It is a poor infrastructure. कुछ नहीं है वहां पर. That's why Apple is increasing its production. That's why a lot many other companies are coming in. A lot much is actually taking place in that particular domain. But the Chinese cannot report that. That'll become a bit of a challenge. But this is what they're talking about. So even just the factor that this is a comment and there's a discourse of a discussion happening in China about this tells you a lot. Till some time back, Chinese boasted of not even considering India a competition. Well, I think times are going to change very fast. Now, this is too much. Chinese academics face backlash for wasting research funding on projects looking for how Marxism can help fight COVID. Okay. I mean, people have tried a lot. Zero COVID, for example. Now they want to try Marxism to fight COVID. Fair enough. Their country, their choice. Ideological studies on topics such as the great anti pandemic spirit trigger an angry response from the public facing a surge in infection and shortage of drugs. This is something that we need to discuss for 30 seconds. Now, we all kind of think, including myself, that these protests did have a certain role for the Chinese Communist Party to kind of switch and change. Whether Xi Jinping himself was involved or not, we'll kind of go forward in this discussion, but they changed, right? What does that tell you? That tells you that the Chinese people have kind of tasted victory. How it can be done. By the way, I mean, there is some OSINT coming out about posters being put up all around Shanghai, even today, against Xi Jinping. So that's pretty interesting. Now, critics say overpraising the party's achievements is likely to stir resentment and does not contribute anything meaningful to the public policy debate. Pretty strong. Pretty strong for a country that has, I think, day for yesterday, banned about 1,200 Weibo accounts. Not a very large number, but these are 1,200 Weibo accounts with very, very large followings within China for criticizing the way that the pandemic has been handled currently. Chinese are very smart. Now, all the world believes that. Everybody says Chinese think 50 years ahead. I tend not to agree to that, but anyways, that's my personal opinion. Given it many times on this channel, but let's see. Chinese firm signs a deal with the Taliban to produce oil in Afghanistan. Interesting. Xinjiang Central Asia Petroleum and Gas will invest about $150 million in the first year and 540 million in subsequent 3 years after that. Taliban will earn 15% from royalty fees from the 25-year contract, with daily oil productions to start at 200 tons and rise to 1,000 tons. Now, I don't know who's smarter when Taliban's oil, I mean, they're the rulers of Afghanistan at the end of it, their own oil, they're giving it at 15% royalty, or the Chinese who were shocked, as reported by Reuters, at the Kabul hotel attack, which injured 5 citizens. Now, this particular attack that took place was on a hotel where Chinese kind of frequented. So it's not an isolated incident. This is a place that the Chinese used to go, and they hate it, right? And this is the same China that is sitting down in Afghanistan and trying to make a deal with it. Hmm, very interesting. Who's smart? I don't know. And what kind of oil is China getting out of Afghanistan? I don't know. Thirdly, with the investment, so called, which is going to go into Afghanistan, do they really expect the Taliban to kind of, pay back this loan, or because Chinese investments means loan. Sometimes I really wonder. And it's not a large quantity of oil, it's nothing. So this is basically a foothold within Afghanistan that they've been trying to get directly without Pakistan being in the picture. So they are actually ready to now put their citizens on the line and say, यार ये पाकिस्तान में तो वैसे ही मर रहे हैं, let's directly deal with the Afghanis and say, यार भाई हमको मत मारना, we'll give you money shani and all that. Let's talk. And they know that Afghan Taliban would be a little more receptive towards them rather than the Pakistanis who'll swipe from one hand and wink the other side to go get a target of the Chinese hit. I don't know who's smarter in this game, but this is what I see at the moment. Let's see how this story goes forward. But there's also another thing. The Chinese announce a lot of things, right? Saudi Arabia, they've gone, oh no, we are going to do the yuan deal, renminbi, or whatever they call their currency. Oh, Saudi is going to start dealing with us in that and this and that. What happened? Nothing. Nothing at all. There's been no news. Nothing. What that tells you is Saudi probably told them, thank you, sab, आगे चलो. ठीक है? So a good face value visit didn't really get much. It's an interesting thing when you also see the Chinese trying to go at it by themselves with the Taliban. Of course, they've been getting the Taliban into China for a little bit. So Pakistan has some interesting days coming ahead. In Xi, they trusted. There was unemployment in China. I think me and General Shankar and myself, lot of us has covered this particular subject. A lot of unemployment is about 18 or 20% for the youth unemployment. So you can imagine millions of people worked in China's mass testing system, and now they're out of a job. Huge army of big whites in hazmat suits are scrambling to fight work after the zero COVID came to an abrupt end. You saw those guys, right? The tons and tons of guys who's welding this, that. They don't have a job anymore. Yeah, well, testing booths have been closed down. Mountain of medical supplies that are no longer needed. Very interesting. So basically, what happened was that there's a whole industry that came up. Now that industry has no job. Xi Jinping. Chinese armed forces are very strong. This is something we hear all the time. And now I'm going to talk about stuff that the Chinese themselves say. I'm not putting any two words in anybody's mouth. If any of you want some sources or where I found this data, I'll be glad to share it with you. PLA ground forces. That's the army, the ground army. We saw this tweet that came out of this gentleman. Troops deployed at China's India border now have portable oxygen concentrators, generators as standard equipment. It sucks in the low oxygen atmosphere and releases 95% pure oxygen. In mountain warfare, the side not gasping for breath will have more accurate shots. So he believes. Their soldiers in high altitude are now going to carry oxygen generators on top of with all the weight that they already carry. That's interesting. Remember one thing about high altitude, you can take as much as oxygen as you want. If you're not acclimatized, if not used to that entire thing, it does not work. It does not work. Right? You can do a lot of reading about it from mountaineers. Forget the army. Talk to the mountaineers, they'll tell you. There are loads of documentaries of mountaineering within YouTube. Check it out, you'll come to know. You cannot just put this thing and walk around the place. You still need to be acclimatized. If you guys saw General Naravane's interview with Smita Prakash, he told you that the Indian Army at that time actually saw very heavy troop rotations. So their troops could not stay there for a long time. Of course, we saw the video of the hardiness of their troops where they got beaten back. May not be Yangtze, but that was quite bad. And the guy in front, I don't know, I mean, just taking a minute out, the guy was more interested in putting his mask up rather than saving himself from the stick. Because he realized, यार मास्क में वो कोविड शोविड हो गया तो पता नहीं कहाँ मेरे को लॉकडाउन में फेंक देंगे. हड्डी वड्डी टूटी तो ठीक है, I'll get it fixed. That tells you the mentality of the people, right? And they actually think this tweet is great, and people are going to be ha 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 ha. Oh, Chinese army, great army. This actually, putting oxygen and walking around like this actually weakens the troops over there. Who carries this thing with the weight? And forget anything else. You're carrying pure oxygen. There's a time bomb stuck to your back. Oxygen is explosive. In a battle scenario, he's talking about accurate shots. Each one of their soldiers will explode if they're carrying cylinders or anything like that. Oxygen generators, they say. It's ridiculous. I think the photograph is self-explanatory. I'm not going to say anything to this. Xi Jinping wants to use the PLAN, which is the Navy, for his games. Right? So recently a report came out in the PLA Daily. This is the Chinese army kind of a magazine. And he says Chinese military short of troops trained in high-tech operations. PLA Daily reveals in a rare show of candor. Vice captain of a corvette says yet to complete training test. Military paper says confirming reports of a lingering talent shortage, especially in the Navy. In another first, the report cites training resource imbalance and ship maintenance as the reasons for backlog. Right? The vice captain named in this report is Wang Yu Bing. So it's not an unknown source, just like the West says. A classified military source told us. This is an actual vice captain telling you this. He says this has left the PLA short of adequately skilled personnel to operate the newly enlisted ships, high tech hardware, a situation framed in the report as, wait for it, equipment, waiting, talent. I'm not talking about the equipment. That's the next point. We'll talk about that. But जो है वो चलाने के लिए बंदे नहीं है इनके पास. Guys, it's a simple thing. You buy a new phone. It takes some time for you to get used to it. And nobody's shooting at you. I think I'm very self-explanatory. Apart from that, I mean, we know China has been copying designs and copying this and copying that. I'll talk about their air capability. I mean, we know the pilots can't fly. Now there is a number that flies around the place from people that are known to this. It's difficult to kind of for me to put this picture, but I'll tell you how many losses their air force have had with data. Navy, they say, have lost 150 aircraft just to try and land on the damn things. The new aircraft carriers. 150 aircraft have been lost. One of the reasons why they got these Brits and these Americans, mercenaries sort of a thing, who, soldiers of fortune, who kind of came and trained the Chinese. Talking about the Air Force, in the Indian media, and I'm going to say this very clearly. Oh, China has built this airport, China has built that runway, they've expanded this, expanded that, ye, wo, and everything like that. Now, I'm not a military expert. I'm not. I talk to people who are military experts, but I'm kind of an analyst. And when China says something that I'm going to tell you right here, we'll see what the reality is. Chinese test pilots paved the way for development of latest PLA warplanes. Good. Test pilots are involved. Very nice. Chinese military's top aviators able to write papers and study reports like aircraft designers. Very nice. Congratulations. Whatever their equivalent award needs to be given to them. Pioneering five-member team that had played a key role in the J-10 project, trained in UK. अपने आप कुछ नहीं कर सकते भाई, ठीक है, अपने आप कुछ नहीं कर सकते. Lee Kyang, the son of a Korean war pilot and part of the five-member team, was selected to take the J-10 on its maiden flight on the March 23rd, 1998. Just 6 months previously, Lee and his four teammates had learned to fly American aircraft. Okay, at an international test pilot school in the United Kingdom, founded by a former flight instructor at the UK's Aeroplane and Armament Experimental Establishment. According to a report published in 2018 in Chuikao, an online military magazine run by the Chinese internet firm Sina. The report said one of Lee's teammates, Quinn Ziulin, I'm sorry, I don't mean to mess up his name, was able to safely land a J-10 prototype that was hit by sudden wind disturbances during a test flight on 12th of July 2002. Kwan dealt with the dangerous situation in just 5 seconds thanks to pilot-induced oscillation training he received at the British school. Something very basic, guys. It looks very, very this thing. I mean, I don't know flying, but I know aviation. This is basics. It's not that advanced. Thanks, old Mike, Kwan shouted as he landed the aircraft safely, the report said. A reference to his American instructor at the British school. Why do they need American instructors in a British school if the Chinese Air Force is so good? Anyways, where the five Chinese pilots were taught how to steadily fly Learjets have been used as variable stability simulators at the US Air Force Test Pilot School. ठीक है? So today the US and UK are saying China this, China that. You're the guys that made it. That is another example of the hypocrisy of the West. They aided China to grow. And any your pilots want to learn, please send them to us. We'll teach them. But still, their pilots went abroad, took training, this and that and the other. The Air Force has lost more than 2,000 pilots in the past 6 decades. I'm not saying this. South China Morning Post and this particular report that I cited. Compare that to the IAF that has lost 200 pilots. 200, one too many, but a comparative, as everybody likes to do in India, right? Oh, China has this, China has that, China has this, China has that. Oh, करो यार, reality की भी comparison कर लो कभी कभार. Satellite photo लेके बस एक वो line draw कर लेते हैं हम लोग हमारे, we keep doing that. This new airport has come, this new heliport has come. भाई उनसे जहाज तो उड़ नहीं रहे. 2,000 pilots is not a small amount of people. 2,000 pilots. It costs a lot of money to train pilots, and especially fighter pilots. 6 decades, that's 60 years. And look at our losses. Okay. It was only 4 years ago. So this 4 years ago that the PLA Air Force started stall and spin training. Now, anyone who knows how to fly will tell you stall and spin training. It's basic. You know, our guys go through it in basic jet school. When they're flying these Kirans and or Hawks or something like that, they're not even in advanced fighters. They go through in that kind of there. And you know, a lot of the pilots can't go through it, so it's a difficult sort of a thing. People who can't go through it get into the transport and helicopter streams and stuff like that. They've just started doing this stall maneuver. I mean, theoretically speaking, stick back into the same place, ease up the rudder, your aircraft will just level out. Khatam. It's now obviously they've lost 2,000 pilots. Somebody's scared. PLAAF. So, guys, the next time somebody puts a map with this thing, that thing on Twitter, please tell them this. Or some journalist puts out a whole lot of bump, please tell them this. If you guys want, I'll send you this report. Please get in touch with me. I'll be happy to give you this report. It's ridiculous, and we all fall for that narrative and that propaganda. You can't win wars with propaganda. When the bullets start flying, then all the narratives go out the window, right? Narratives are part of the gray zone, not hot wars. I mean, yeah, they're part of the hot wars, but on the ground, it doesn't help the soldiers. Which brings me to the last couple of slides. Has Xi Jinping been weakened? Now, why do I say this? I said there is something I wanted to discuss with you guys. Has Xi Jinping been weakened? That's the question I ask. And why do I ask this? Protest. Beijing says, "Bhai, zero COVID is off, and business now, economy is the name of the game." अच्छा जी, ठीक है साहब, आपकी country, आप जो मर्जी करो यार, that's perfectly all right. Okay, so zero COVID policy was whose? Xi Jinping. He pioneered it. And if you guys remember to the first slide, first couple of slides, where he said China's COVID policies were scientific and science based. Okay. That scientific policy was put into the dustbin for all it matters. Australia, who was sanctioned, they invited Penny Wong. They're now wanting to buy coal from them. And US also, they're starting to do some trade talks. Yeah, let's buy this, let's buy that. The new foreign minister was an ambassador in the US. Tells you something. China's Economic Work Conference, which happened in mid December, I think about 20th or 22nd of December, didn't mention anything like common prosperity in its readout. And I've read the entire thing. It's not there. Have they forgotten Xi Jinping? He just said two, three things: zero COVID, common prosperity. That was his mantra. Okay. He went off to Saudi Arabia in early December. I was telling you about that failure. But then what was happening in China? Massive protests. Will a country's leader leave the country when there are so many protests happening? Or was he told to go? I don't know. As I said, she had all these meetings. By Saudi will buy some gas in renminbi and this and that. You want trade? हुआ? अभी तक तो कुछ नहीं हुआ. If that was the case, both the countries should have signed a memorandum, an understanding, an agreement, or something. Press releases, notes, America going ballistic. Nothing happened. Okay. What does that tell you? Now, I'll take you guys back to a time when me and Major General Rajiv Narayanan were discussing who will win the election or the selection or the anointment, if I may. We did this episode just when the 20th Party Congress was happening, just before that, to analyze what could be the outcomes of that. Now, Sir came up with three things, three ideas. He said, yeah, one, Xi Jinping will come back with all the force and all this thing and hail Xi Jinping, and that's it. Two, he will not come back. Three, he'll be brought back, but he'll be a powerless guy. He'll be figurehead. उसको सारे position दे देंगे. काम सारा separate हो रहा होगा. When you see a situation where zero COVID, common prosperity, sanction on Australia, this and that and the other, and they want to talk to this thing. And by the way, Xi Jinping is supposed to visit USA in November this year. Hardened enemies, huh? All this stuff is happening. That tells you there's some change. I am not sure whether he's been given the powers that he thinks he has. But of course, he does have certain powers, and that's something that we see. He removed Wang Yi. Not that I am a good friend of Wang Yi or anything like that, but he removed him and put in this guy who's Kin Gang, right? He was the ambassador to the United States. And I was, before this conversation, actually, this live was there. I was talking to General Narayan sir and just getting a little bit of his thought on this process. He said, "Yaar, ye to koi, he's a no one." And that struck me later on. And I said, "Yeah, that's true. He's not even a member of the Chinese Politburo. Out of nowhere." And mind you guys, all these changes were there in the card. There is no question. But they were supposed to happen on the 31st of March. Let me see the date today, 7th of January. What happened? Was Wang Yi becoming sort of a roadblock for the Xi Jinping? Because this guy is supposed to be very close friends or very, sab to Xi Jinping. He brought his own boy. The best thing is Wang Yi is not out of the picture. Huh? He's been promoted. So there are two ways that managers handle team members that they don't like. Either they ask them to go or they promote them. That's what he's done. And the news says, and this is part of Nikki Asia, China adopts a mild tone to smooth way for Xi Jinping's visit to the US. Okay. My question is, where is the new prime minister? The previous one was Li Keqiang, very visible. He used to go here, go there, give this lecture, give that lecture. The new guy, I don't even know his name. Any of you guys remember his name? Quiet, गायब, बंदा कहाँ है पता ही नहीं. What is happening there? See, there are certain factions in China. Are these factions kind of playing a certain game? Let's see. Now, this news came out. I China's military coup, which was propagated by India quite a bit. I mean, of course, we spoke about it. Me and General Shankar, I think, spoke about it, and we said that, yeah, coup, no coup, we don't know, but something is happening. PLA general rumor to take place to replace Xi Jinping in a coup is now PLA GF commander. Acha ji. This is a news that came out. The actual reality is different. He's the guy who protected Xi Jinping, and he's now been made the PLA ground forces commander. Remember, Xi Jinping has a control over the army. That's the biggest thing. That is, I think, in my opinion, still keeping him in his place. How much power he's got, that's a different story altogether. So, guys, that's all I wanted to say. A lot more, lot much is happening in China, and I've given you a kind of a look at the bluff that the Chinese call all the time. We fall for this propaganda and we fall for this, oh, ho, this, that, and the other that the Chinese put out. And we realize when you actually get into it and start digging, and you realize that I still can't get over the fact 2,000 pilots were lost. That's a lot. Now, the questions that need to be asked is, as I said, is Xi Jinping being sidelined? All his policies are out the window. What happened? Even, yeah, by the way, that conference, that economic conference that took place, that didn't talk about Xi Jinping thought, which is supposed to be like a postgraduate diploma study today in China. People are doing PhDs on Xi Jinping thought. That wasn't mentioned. Why? What? Xi Jinping not working anymore? Of course, it's our neighbor. We need to deal with its all eccentricities that actually come across because it's China and it's us. So we will do that. But we need to realize the reality before we create an impression about China. I'm just telling you a small little story. I'm sure a lot of you, if you start digging, you'll find a lot more. I can't put all of that in within a 30-40 minute talk because it's just so much data. Whatever I found interesting, I did put it up there. Get your own research, put some more stuff in the comments so that a lot of us can benefit. Guys, I'm going to get into the questions. Thanks so much for watching so far. Naveen Saab, thank you so much for your contribution. Observation: all SCMP articles have why you can trust SCMP links. Says a lot about perception and authenticity of the Chinese media. But when the so-called Chinese media, you know, and if they say what I just showed to you, you gotta believe it. Then, I mean, it's like that. And see, the deal with the Chinese media is I don't think the Chinese kind of believe that nonsense even. But it gives us a good insight as to it won't tell you what exactly is happening. You got to kind of take something from here, take something from there, and kind of join the dots and say, okay, why is this happening? And you'll probably get a picture. Then you observe it for a little bit and see whether your hypothesis is correct or not. And that's how you can kind of get into a groove. Sometimes you're right, sometimes you're wrong. I mean, that's analysis. That's okay. But that's how a lot of us would kind of try to look at China. You also have said countdown to 10,000 guys. Thank you so much till now. I think I'm going to give you a live count of the subscribers. We were at 9,133. So I guess, yeah, I should be able to, with all your blessings, reach 10,000 subscribers by next weekend. And when I do, I'll have a small little surprise for all of you guys, and that I'll announce as soon as I'm coming close to that date. Right, Mandar, nice to have you. Xi Jinping is our agent in China, it seems. He played the game China should have played 10 years later. Well, they're our best friends, and I think we've discussed this on that very channel. Imran Khan in Pakistan and Xi Jinping in China. India doesn't need anything more after that. Lage raho, and that's just about it. You also say Western countries have been running out of war fighting populations, and therefore the will to stand up. That's true, but they still have a printing press of money, which they will kind of keep doing this. So yeah, the West is only nice where their interest is stuck. Something is hidden from us. Always, sir. Always. There is no question about it, because at the end of it, and we've kind of, if you've not seen these two episodes that I did with General Narayanan and one solo that I did, both of them are about oil, and the solo is called when Western morality is Western morality the new colonialism. You kind of get a fair idea of how this whole thing, rests. Okay. Adi sir, mRNA vaccine will surely have catastrophic side effects. Sir, if it is a mRNA vaccine, we don't know where Chinese have stolen it from. But anyways, this is because the protein in mucous cells with COVID virus attaches usually has a positive function, which will be blocked by the mRNA vaccine, if I'm not mistaken. Sir, I am not an expert in this particular thing, but yeah, I'll take your word for it. John, sir, you say Saudi has applied to join the BRICS. Yeah, Saudi has applied to join the BRICS. There's no question about it. It's not just for China. There's a lot of other interests in Saudi Arabia. Remember, India is there, Russia is there, Brazil is there. So there's a lot more just to this thing. And remember one thing: the Saudis are pretty good in messaging against the US. So they will kind of do these messages here and there and stuff like that. So they will do it. And if push comes to shove, they're a free country. Yeah, let them join whenever they feel like it. China is in the Security Council, and they have over 15 trillion economy. If with this they are not superpower, then nothing will work for them. If they are still insecure and threatened by it, then something is wrong. We've been saying it. Something is wrong on Dev Talks for over 2 years. There is something surely wrong in China. We just haven't figured out what it is. I think it's Xi Jinping, but right, the Taliban offer security to India, restarted projects, especially the Tapi pipeline. Adi, yes, they did. They mentioned that. We've got our embassy and certain diplomats actually working there. Um, let's see. It's not something that you'd want to jump into, because a lot of people consider now Afghanistan as Taliban territory. It's not. There are multiple factions within the Taliban who are probably at war with each other as well. So before you jump into that entire game, one has to be very, very careful. Saudis won't trust the Chinese, leave alone. In fact, nobody will. That's why yuan isn't successful. Even Russians won't trust the yuan for a long time. That's why Russians are also pushing for BRICS currency. Yeah, I know that BRICS currency thing is kind of going on, and you also say plus currency based market for these currencies, market of currency based on basket of currencies, and not one single country has much more takers, because single country won't be able to sanction other countries, but it's still BRICS currency could fail too. So they get a lot of things can happen. A lot of these things are also statements that are actually put across to kind of push a certain narrative and stuff like that, because a BRICS currency will have to be equibalanced, and that's something which is very, very difficult, considering India and China have vastly different needs and wants and settings. So it's a bit off. I am not sure, but let's see. It's It's That's how it is. You say that's how the BSF does it, sir. That's how the Indian armed forces have been doing it in totality. Indo-Tibetan Border Police, the BSF, the Indian Army Special Forces, the other forces and the agencies that are there. They've all been there. I mean, there are medical equipment, there are emergency equipment, there are there, but nobody walks around with a tube stuck to his nose, and especially in high altitude area, carrying a gun. That's uh, No wonder they recorded GBs of static, and only then they realized they departed from Sri Lanka and reached China. Of course, yeah, that is a rumor. I can't really confirm that. General Narayan sir, namaskar. Good evening. You say that can't build military on narratives. Sir, you know narratives is my favorite word, sir. And courtesy all of you guys, I've gotten to learn a lot much more about narratives as per se. Right? Sir, maybe these news are planted to divert attentions from realities. Well, see, understand couple of things, and I'm not just taking this out of news is to kind of substantiate what I'm saying. There are a lot more things available which will tell you that the Chinese military and all this stuff is not as strong as it's. You look at what happened to the submarines that they gave to Bangladesh. They used them for 6 months and said, "Yeah, isko le jao wapis." Pakistan is having terrible time with their submarines and the JF-17 Thunders. They've got cracks coming out on their fuselage. Their canopies have flown off in 5G turns and stuff like that. A lot has happened. And this is common knowledge. So this is not something which is, oh my God, this is something which it's there. So, when you hear this and when you have the evidence of whatever Chinese equipment is around, you kind of tend to believe it. Remember the I think the armored games or the army games that happened in Russia some time ago, and the Russian and the Chinese tank were racing, and there was a funny video. I don't know if it was real or not, but tells you a story. It came out of Russia, so right. The Chinese leadership fell for their own propaganda. It seems they spent too much energy convincing their population and the world they were good, and they failed to become good. That's one of the biggest problems with the narrative. You fall for it yourself. I mean, 100 झूठ को अगर आप एक झूठ को 100 बारी बोलोगे थोड़े टाइम के बाद you will also start believing that lie is the truth. You have a point there. More important than the fact that they were doing this in 1998, 2002 is the fact that they're still doing it. They have just more money, so they poach trainers. So that's what we know, Naveen. I mean, I don't know what else they're doing. You really don't know what else they're doing. If they've lost 2,000 pilots, that tells you the kind of this thing. I mean, and most of them, if I'm any judge of anything else, they're going to be landing accidents. 150 aircraft on an aircraft carrier trials are landing accidents because anybody can take off. It's how do you land? That's the whole thing. You can take it up, but bringing it back down is the most difficult thing. So yeah, USA chief and others were given a ride in the LCA. That's yeah. Who's seen a Chinese aircraft close by? No one. Nobody's seen his performance. They only sell it to certain countries who are indebted to them, so that the truth doesn't come out. So that's how they kind of keep the closed circuit closed. But that doesn't really work because stuff still comes out. Only two people know whether the PLA can fight: Indian soldiers on the border and the US Navy sailors. Yeah, US Navy sailors, I'm sure, know the technical specs of their Navy a little better. And yeah, Indian soldiers, I think, know quite much more about them and their capabilities. Um, have these Chinese graduated even one squadron of pilots for their carriers? I'm not sure, sir, but they've got these test pilots that have been training all around the world, and that's something that is coming out pretty clearly. Till very very recently, they were doing it. So you don't know. I mean, they might have some people. I'm sure it's not that they're completely blank, but the kind of quantum of pilots and the kind of experience that they actually need to carry out active battle combat. I mean, see, remember when our pilots go and pick up an aircraft, they go there for a long, long time to fly and learn and this and that. So by the time they come back, they've got heavy amount of experience about it. The S-400 crews were in Russia for almost, I think, 6-8 months prior to them being brought here. They were trained. They probably did mock drills and this and that and the other. So by the time the guys actually come here, they're, it's like the train the trainer program. So these guys become the super trainers, and they all do that. So it's quite a this thing. Yes, sir. Punjab's show is coming up. I will plan that as soon as possible. There's a lot of research, buddy. I mean, there's a lot of nonsense that is being put across. So there's a lot of research that goes along with this, and especially doing that along my other shows. I've got a certain structure ready. I'll come back to you about this. Remembering the former US Indo PACOM commander who said the Chinese are adding up ships faster to their fleet than the trained manpower to man it is going to create issues down the road. Yeah, I mean, I said this. You buy a new phone, it takes you a week to figure out what's happening. Where's the settings? Where's what? Where's this? And this is when you upgrade from a same company to a same company. Here are these guys getting top end this thing, and I don't even know. And there are bullets firing. The first shot fires over your head. Everything goes out the window after that. What are they going to do? I don't know. Right? So there's a lot that we need to kind of consider. Even if we have shortage of 300 Air Force personnel because last 10 years so many pilots are retired, different reasons. Pilot job is very hard in the entire tri services. Well, sir, shortages will always remain. But I think there's a lot which is being done. Different subject. We'll kind of discuss it some other day. How can we bypass negative China's veto against India in the UNSC, our permanent seat and veto power? Yeah, you can't. That's how the damn thing has been formed. And if you look at what Minister Jaishankar has been saying, that we find that to be redundant. So we are putting our thoughts out very, very clearly, which I don't think we were doing before. So it's something that we need to kind of understand very, very clearly, right? So has anybody seen the news where the Russian politician is asking China to return the Liaoning aircraft carrier which they bought from Ukraine? I haven't. If you've got this, please send it to me. That's going to be an amazing save. It's really, really cool. Some American analysts like Peter Zeland saying that the dollar is not going to go anywhere anytime soon. They will continue to grow. I hope rupees maintains the international currency basket this year. Dollar. Nobody's saying dollar is going to go anywhere. So it's a long process. It's not something that you can just wish away. The dollar has taken so many years to come to this point. It's not just going to tuck gone, and we are not as strong to kind of we're not. It's there's a lot that needs to be done. Guys, thanks so much. I'm gonna end the show here. It's gonna be an hour of me just talking to you guys. I hope you guys like the show. It's a lot to do with what's happening within China and a little bit of an analysis about their air force, army, and their navy. Of course, they've got a rocket force, they've got strategic forces, there's that and the other. I'm sure there is um you know uh there's a lot which could be there and could not be there in the entire game. Now, see, when we do analysis like this, and I have a this comment which says, "I won't trust any Chinese declaring their military is weak." That's fair enough. I would I would believe it. That's one of the reasons why the Chinese don't do anything. If and I say this very very clearly. Since you've brought this up, I'm going to kind of General Narayan sir, thank you so much for calling it insightful, sir. गुरु से ये कुछ मिल जाए तो बहुत अच्छा है और कुछ नहीं है. Yeah, so coming back to the point, Chinese military, if they were that strong, they would have, and as a lot of people in India say, oh ho, इन लोगों ने तो हमारा land ले लिया, ये ले लिया, वो ले लिया. अच्छा ठीक है यार, if they've taken it, why have they not declared victory? Xi Jinping needs a victory right now. If they won against India, as a lot of people in India believe, why haven't they not declared it? So-called masters of propaganda, why didn't they do it? Why aren't they fighting? Come fight. Why are they not doing anything? We'll take over Taiwan, we'll take over Taiwan, we'll take over Taiwan. They've not done it. We'll take over South Tibet, this, that, and the other. They've not done anything. Yeah, posturing is different. Realities are completely different. And when you listen to a lot of the army people that I've spoken to on this channel, and these are guys who've dealt with these people. Yeah, they've seen them face to face. They've seen their equipment. They've seen how they work. They probably know the ins and outs of those equipment because these guys are keeping a track. Of course, a lot of them will not talk about it on the open media because it will also release information about how they got that information. We're not stupid, and it's something that we need to kind of understand. I'm not trying to, put you down or anything like that, but I just want to put this point across. A lot of it which actually happens within our media is a lot of it is maybe, I can't prove it, so it may be a part of Chinese information warfare. We know a lot of media houses get infiltrated by China. A lot of things come in. So there's a lot. And that's one of the reasons why. I mean, people like me can sit in our houses and talk to you to so many people. And people would, take a lot of information from here. Not just from my personal shows, but so many shows that we do. So it's the era of alternative media because I don't have any money coming in from anywhere which gives me a particular narrative. I don't have the Indian government knocking on my door and saying, "Yeah, bhai, tu paise le le yaar, pro India baat kariyo." No, it's my interest. I look at it and I find this to be this. When I talk to military personnel, they tell me, "Yeah, you're right. Their equipment is no good." Put two and two together, look at what the Chinese are saying, and you got a story in front of you. It tells you at least 70 to 80% of what is the game. As I said, I can't put that all in an hour show, so I just put a little bit of a gist. But yes, guys, that's all I have. Thank you so much for staying with me and listening to the entire spiel I was giving you. Before I sign off, like the video. Please, please, please like the video. It helps me grow. I gotta hit 10,000 in the next week. I'd actually, this is something that would be really, really great for the channel. Um, I've got some interesting stuff lined up for you in the next week about China, Chinese influence operations, Chinese history with Tibet, and a whole lot of inside perspectives on what's going to happen apart from the regular shows that is going to happen. I hope you guys also saw the show with Lieutenant General Satish Dua about the issues in Rajouri and how this is probably or not, and not leak out the story right now, a change in the way that things are happening in the valley. Thank you so much, guys. Till tomorrow night for another live and all of you together. Jai Hind and Jai Bharat.